Well, good day and welcome to you. It is August the 15th. Hope you're having a great day wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing. Want to welcome you to Search for Signs and just point out, if you want to know more about this information, you've heard about it for the first time maybe, and you want to see if there's anything to this for yourself, I have no problem with you investigating it to see if there's any truth to it. So I have included links to websites that I think give wonderful background information about what we talk about. You can either look at those or not. But anyway, hopefully you'll look into this a little bit deeper than just hearing me say it and talk about it. Now, I also want to thank Mark Hill and Roger Pike for taking time out of their day to comment. And I always look forward to comments and, of course, really like questions that come my way because it helps us to kind of formulate videos and helps us all learn more about this information in that way too. So appreciate it, guys. And I want to address Mark's comments, or one of his comments. He said, Maitreya's teaching sounds so close to one I've been listening to of late. Very, very similar. So thank you for that. He didn't specify who, and it doesn't really matter. If he doesn't want to share, it doesn't matter. But anyway, I was going to say this. In terms of the priorities of Maitreya, which is a part of his teachings, of course, is the biggest one is the need for peace and the need to solve the environmental problem, of course, right? Now, you'll hear his priorities come out in the people in your life, whether they're people you know at work or family members or friends or whatever from time to time. You'll hear it from people, maybe if you're attending marches and so forth, of, demanding change from their governments and so forth. You'll hear it coming out of those people's mouths from time to time. Of course, you'll hear about it coming out of the mouths of celebrities and even politicians. You got to give them credit whenever they're credited, whenever credit is due. But you really have to listen to them for quite a long time before something comes out that's a priority of Maitreya. But anyway, you'll hear it come out. And the reason is because humanity is ready for these changes. Maitreya would not be able to speak to humanity on TV, even incognito. He wouldn't even been able to even enter London and await an invitation to talk on TV and from humanity if humanity wasn't ready on some level. So we're ready for this information. We just don't know how to get there, and that's the missing piece with who and what Maitreya is for humanity, of course. Now, the teachings of Maitreya and the priorities of Maitreya, of course, right? Most people don't know. Now, one thing, for instance, is humanity is starting to wake up to the problems of, let's say, the environment. You have millions of people every year, more and more are demanding from their governments to do something about the environment. I don't think the governments really have the answer, right? And that's why they're putting them off, right? They don't know what to do. If I may, based on this information, based on what Maitreya says is one of his biggest priorities, without sharing there could be no justice, without justice there could be no peace, and without peace there could be no future. Wouldn't it stand to reason that governments would have to trust each other a little bit better than they are today to solve the problem of the environment? The only way to do that, according to Maitreya, is to bring about the principle of sharing. Nations have to learn how to give up some of those excesses that they've been storing away for decades or maybe even centuries that are just sitting there doing nothing or going bad or wasting away. Now, according to the masters, each nation has some excess of some kind. So it's not just the United States giving to every other nation and then those nations not giving anything back. That's not how it works. There are even tiny nations with just a little excess of something that the United States could even use. And they could pay back what they take from that excess and so forth. That's the principle of sharing. I have included a link that gives you some information about sharing that's happened. It happened once. It's called the Marshall Plan. They don't talk about it in that regard, but if you look at it from this information's perspective, you will see what I'm saying. It did bring about trust amongst the nations that participated in it. That is the first thing that we have to do. Now, the other thing about Maitreya's teachings that you might hear from teachers, whether it's, you can even see it in the Bible. You can even hear some of Maitreya's priorities coming out of preachers' mouths in the pulpit of these churches and so forth, of course. Because the true teachings of Jesus are the true teachings of Maitreya. They're one and the same. There's no difference. The ideology, the belief in it, the distortions in it, of course, are different. But the core of and central to the teachings of Jesus are core and central to the teachings of Maitreya. There's no difference. But one thing I do want to point out for those who don't know already, if you want to know more about the teachings of Maitreya, definitely check out the link that I provided in the description portion of this video. And one of them leads you to the YouTube channel for Krishnamurti's videos. And according to Maitreya himself, he said, and I quote, that Krishnamurti is a true teacher of his teachings. So he talks about anything from marriage to beliefs and ideologies to death and so forth. And if you want to know what Maitreya has to say about it, this might give you a little bit of an insight into it. So check it out. Now, I want to segue into an article that Benjamin Creme's master wrote entitled Creating the Sword of Cleavage. I've read this article before. I talk about the sword of cleavage all the time. Now, I get religious people who listen to these videos. I don't know if they listen to them all the way through or if they just kind of skim through it and then, or just read a title. It doesn't matter. But if you're familiar with the Bible at all, Jesus at one point said to his disciples, I have come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword, to set father against son, brother against brother, mother against daughter, neighbor against neighbor, something to that effect. Don't know the verse, don't know what chapter it's from, doesn't matter, but it's in there, and you probably have heard it before because it's quite a famous verse. Most people don't really inquire and think about what he was saying about that. I have had some people, because I talk about Maitreya's priority for peace, have tried to throw that back in my face and say, well, he must be the Antichrist because Jesus said he's not coming to bring peace, but to bring a sword. Well, they're misinterpreting what Jesus meant by that. What he was talking about, according to the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, was one, not about a sword, and also not about the need to bring about peace, but it is a temporary manifestation within the people around the avatar, whether it was Jesus at the time of Jesus, or now for the whole world, because Maitreya is speaking to the whole world in the way that he is. It creates the divisions that we've seen, the political divisions especially, right? Now I'm going to talk about that in reference to what's going on in the United States, and I'm going to read this article. But there's divisions in everything. Nations between nations, whether it's Pakistan and India, Israel and Palestine, the United States and Russia, the right and left politics, economically, even the scientific community and the religious community have their divisions, right? One only believes what they see under a microscope. The other one only believes what they read in the Bible. And they're not connecting in any way, shape, or form. And so there are more examples of divisions, of course, but these are some big ones that we can all kind of relate to because we're seeing it all the time on the news. And of course, we're seeing it in our lives and so forth and that kind of thing. But what does it all mean? And does it ultimately mean the end of life on planet Earth? Well, just so you don't have to listen to the whole video, according to the masters, it isn't. And it's a necessary point in the path that we have to go through as a people in order to make the ultimate choice. Maitreya will eventually present a choice for humanity to make. Either we will accept the principle of sharing, bring about justice, bring about peace, and that in and of itself is the only path to give us a future, or we will continue on the same way that we're doing, and eventually we will destroy ourselves, whether it's militarily or the environment will be so ruined that we can't come back from it, and then everybody will die off. That's the choice. But we couldn't make the choice, according to Maitreya and the Masters. We can't make the choice really, or see the choice for ourselves until the divisions are so divided. Till we're so divided that there will be no middle ground between any type of thinking. But eventually it will bring a very harmonious synthesis amongst all of humanity, where brotherhood will reign and cooperation and so forth. It seems quite utopian at this moment in time, all evidence to the contrary, but according to the masters, this is the reason why we're going through this. So I'm bringing this up based on the news here in the United States. The Justice Department is raided Mar-a-Lago. Of course, Trump and all his cronies and all his merry men of whatever have all been out there on the news talking all this stuff. And I don't have any trust of the FBI or the government, just as they don't. But it's creating more and more and more and more divisions, which I didn't think last year we could get any more divided than we were even last year. But I guess we can, right? But we are still here. We haven't blown each other up yet. But it's creating more and more divisions. So what does it mean? So this is what I wanted to read as coming from one of these masters, entitled Creating the Sword of Cleavage. And if you can kind of insert Trump into what he's saying, even amongst the first sentence, you'll see what I'm talking about and why I think it's important that we look at this. From time to time, there appears among men a figure who embodies the best or the worst that men can show. These individuals become the most loved or the most hated of men. In either case, they usually draw to themselves many followers or devotees. Such figures have enormous magnetic appeal for the majority of men, or on occasion are the inspiring example of destructive power on a large scale. The history books are full of examples of both types. Today, in large numbers, many examples of both types are manifesting worldwide. The effect of this manifestation is to set before humanity two opposing lines of action, and so create the tension of choice, which will determine the future of the race. In the biblical terms, this is the, quote, sword of cleavage, unquote. For many years, the energies emanating from and directed by Maitreya have sought to create such confrontation of opposites. This may seem strange indeed to many, but it is essential that humanity make the correct choices for its future. Otherwise, the future would be bleak indeed. The sword of cleavage is the energy we call love. Wielded by Maitreya, it sets, quote-unquote, brother against brother, and tests the true divine consciousness of men everywhere. The ultimate aim of all evolution is to establish on earth the, quote, kingdom of God, unquote, and the sword of cleavage shows men the way. The teaching of Maitreya is simple. One might think that his priorities would seem obvious to all men. Sadly, this is not the case. Maitreya presents a future of tranquility and peaceful endeavor as the inevitable result of sharing and justice for all, the creation of a world where no man lacks, where no 2 days are alike, where the joy of brotherhood manifests through all men. How is it possible, you might think, to gainsay such a message of hope? Is this not the future yearned for by everyone? It is the future hoped for by the majority of men, but not by all. Humanity stands on different rungs of the evolutionary ladder. Above a certain level, all bodes well for men. It is those who have not as yet manifested the measure of their divine self who do not recognize that sharing is divine, that justice and right relationships are divine, but who see divinity as competition and conflict, and register a man's worth by his weight of his gold. Many are fearful and suffering, bereft of work and hope for the future. They struggle from day to day, but many others are making their future for themselves, and many too are dying in the process. Throughout the world, men are awakening to the possibility of a better life with freedom and justice at its heart. Have no fear. The people's voice is rising, and like a contagion, affecting more and more. Maitreya stands behind those who live or die for the truth of freedom, justice, and the unity of men. The young lead the way, and the future is for them. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.